When I stood before the gate. Written by Khaled Abu Alat. Epigraph. Your entry cannot be guaranteed. KX. Chapter 1. The night my heart for her. God. They say your life flashes before your eyes. Mine stalled first, like an engine that knows it's about to quit. We were in the car, deep in the kind of silence that feels like company. Streetlights made quick gold stripes across the windshield. The world looked normal enough to trick me into thinking I had tomorrow. We rolled up to the light. Red. That's where it all got stupid fast. A car slid beside us like it had been rehearsing. The window cracked down halfway, and a face leaned out. Young, tense, hungry, wearing that blank look people get when they decide you're not a person. You're a problem to solve. I remember thinking, he wants the car. I was ready for the old script. The shaking hands. The give me the keys. The pride versus survival argument you have in a split second. But he didn't ask for keys. He pulled something out, and the streetlight reflected off it like it was proud. The sound that came next didn't feel like a sound. It felt like the universe clapping its hands once. Hard. Just to get my attention. My mouth opened. My lungs tried to help. I tried to scream, and found out screaming is a privilege of the living. Everything tilted. Then everything stopped. Not darkness. Not sleep. Just absence. Like someone cut the power on my body, but left my thoughts running. I woke up, and the first thing I noticed was what wasn't there. My heartbeat. No thump-thump. No drum in my chest. I reached for my pulse like a habit, and felt nothing answering back. I tried to breathe and did, but the air was wrong. Thin and sharp like breathing winter. I looked around and saw white. Not hospital white. Not Snow White. A white that didn't belong to a place at all. It surrounded me from every direction like I'd been dropped inside a blank page. Yo, I yelled. My voice didn't move the air. It didn't echo. It didn't even feel like it left me. It was like talking inside your own head, except my lips were moving. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. Two men stood on either side of me. They were big, solid in a way I wasn't. Their faces didn't scare me exactly. It was worse than scary. They looked like they already knew. No surprise. No curiosity. Just a calm that said, we've done this before. We'll do it again. One of them took my arm. Not rough. Not gentle. Just certain. Hold on, he said. The other repeated it like an echo with purpose. Hold on. Where I'm at. I demanded. What happened? Where's the car? Where's? Hold on. I tried to pull away and felt how useless anger is when you don't have weight. They started walking. I followed because there was nothing else to do. There was no floor, but my feet found a path anyway. The white shifted as we moved through it, like fog that respected their authority. I looked down and my stomach dropped. I was naked, not in the embarrassing way, in the erased way. No clothes, no jewelry, no phone, no wallet, no proof I'd ever existed. Even my scars gone. All the little marks that told my story were wiped clean like somebody was resetting me to factory settings. Yo, why ain't got? I started, but my words felt childish out here. The men didn't answer. They kept walking like time didn't matter. Then the white began to thin. A shape formed ahead, dark lines cutting through brightness. A gate. Tall iron bars, older than any neighborhood I knew, crowned with points like it was designed to keep out things worse than me. Frost clung to it. My breath showed up in front of my face, as if the air itself was warning me to speak carefully. The escort stopped a few feet from it. I turned to ask one more question. They were gone. No footsteps. No retreat. No fading. Just gone, like they were never there. Like they had returned to whatever corner of reality lends people when you're being processed. My mouth went dry. I stood alone in front of that gate. And for the first time since the gun went off, I felt something close to fear. Not fear of pain, fear of truth. On the other side of the gate stood a figure. Tall, still, the shape of a man, but the face was wrong. Not missing exactly. More like shadow refused to become features. Like the universe didn't want me getting comfortable. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He spoke like a father trying not to raise his voice in front of company. Please, he said, don't make this any harder. I swallowed. Who the F, who are you? My child, he said. I'm your father. It hit me wrong, like a joke told at a funeral. I only got one dad. I snapped. And he ain't you. A pause. Then, calm as snowfall. Is that a fact to you? I hated how gentle it was. My dad left, I said, when I was young. He left you. The figure agreed. And you've been carrying that absence like it's your identity. My throat tightened. Then he said something that made my knees want to fold even though my knees didn't feel real. I brought it back to you. I laughed, but it came out cracked. Man, what are you talking about? You're close, he continued, ignoring my disbelief. Very close. If you get a step in. Step in where? The figure didn't lean forward, didn't gesture dramatically. He just said it like a door label. Heaven. The word landed in my chest like it had weight. The gate didn't open. The gate didn't glow. It just stood there, patient, waiting for the version of me that could speak honestly. I stared at him and felt every excuse I'd ever used lining up behind my teeth like they were ready to defend me. Then, quiet as a sentence being written, "Tell me," he said, "what you've done that makes you deserve to be let in." I opened my mouth, and for the first time, I didn't know what to say. Chapter 2. The Ledger of Breath. The silence after his question did not feel empty. It felt recorded. Every breath I took in that cold air seemed to etch itself into something unseen, like the atmosphere itself was keeping notes. The gate did not move. The figure did not shift. But the space between us grew heavy, thick with the weight of an answer I did not know how to give. "You asked what I've done," I finally said. My voice sounded smaller than I intended. "I've lived. I survived. I tried." "Trying," he replied, "is not the same as becoming." His words did not boom. They settled. That was worse. "I never killed anybody," I said quickly, as if I were filling out a form. "I never planned to. I never woke up wanting to hurt the world. You heard it anyway." The air sharpened around me. "I did what I had to do," I insisted. "You know where I'm from. You know how it is. Nobody hands you a clean start." "You were not handed a clean start," he agreed. "But you were handed choices." The word choices echoed louder than the gunshot had. Before I could respond, the white space behind him shifted. It did not transform into flames or thunder. It became something more precise. Images, not floating like dreams, not hazy like memory. They were sharp, detailed, merciless. I saw my mother's purse on the kitchen counter. I saw my small hand slipping bills from it. I felt again the childish panic and the thrill. I remembered telling myself it was not really stealing because she owed me, because she never understood me, because I deserved something. "You were 10, I muttered. "You were learning," he corrected. The image dissolved. Another took its place. A convenience store. Fluorescent lights. A clerk behind the counter. My arm extended. The weight of the gun in my hand felt heavier here than it ever had on Earth. I saw the clerk's eyes the way they truly were. Wet, terrified, human. "I did not pull the trigger," I said defensively. "You did not need to." The image shifted again. A woman's face. Anger. My anger. Words thrown like bricks. Then my hand, raised not in protection, but in dominance. I had buried that memory under justification. She had pushed me. She had disrespected me. She had said things she should not have said. Now, stripped of context and ego, it looked exactly as it was. Small. Cruel. "You want me to say I was perfect?" I demanded. "I'm not perfect. Nobody is." "I did not ask for perfection," he said. "I asked for truth." The images continued. Packets exchanged in dim hallways. Money folded and hidden. Parents who bought from me and went home to children who did not understand why their mother's hands shook at dinner. I had told myself that addiction was not my responsibility. I was simply meeting demand. I was surviving. Now I watched a little boy waiting at a window for a mother who would not wake up. "You cannot blame me for all of that," I whispered. "I am not asking you to carry the world," he said. "Only your part in it." The white shifted again, and this time the image cut deeper. A hospital room. A sonogram printout. A decision made in fear and pride and financial panic. I remember the arguments, the excuses, the rationalizations that sounded logical in the dark. "But that was different," I said quickly. "I had nothing. I could not provide." "You were given life," he replied, "and you measured it against convenience. The word convenience pierced me in a way nothing else had. I felt anger rise in me like it always did when I was cornered. You stand there and talk about what I did, I said, my voice growing stronger. But what about what you did? What about kids born sick? What about people starving? What about wars? What about bullets and red lights? The air grew colder, but not hostile. Pain exists, he said. You allow it. I allow freedom. That is the same thing. No, he said gently. It is the cost of love that is not forced. I wanted to reject that. I wanted to call it divine public relations. But something in me knew the difference between a slogan and a principle. You think I did not see you when you were 12 and praying for your father to come back? He asked. The image appeared before I could respond. A boy on the edge of a bed. Me, younger, smaller, asking the ceiling for something that never arrived. I saw you when you swallowed pills and then panicked because you did not truly want to die, he continued. Another image. A bathroom floor. My younger self crying not because I hated life, but because I did not know how to live it. I saw you when you fed a stranger with the last of your money, he said. The image changed again. A winter night. A man outside a train station. I had almost walked past him. I had not. You are not only your worst moments, he said, but neither are you free from them. The images stopped. The white returned to stillness. You lived, he continued, as though no one was watching. Yet you always believed someone should rescue you from consequence. I clenched my jaw. So what? You want worship? You want me on my knees thanking you for every breath while the world burns? I wanted acknowledgement, he said. Not flattery. Gratitude. Not fear. I thanked you. I insisted. You bargained with me. The truth of that stung. Every prayer I had ever spoken replayed in my mind. They were rarely about who I could become. They were about what I could receive. Protection, money, escape, vindication. When I removed obstacles, he continued, you called it luck. When I withheld things that would have destroyed you, you called it cruelty. You took things I loved, I shot back. I prevented you from worshiping them. Silence fell again, but it was no longer empty. It was layered. You carry anger like it is armor, he said, but it is rusting you from the inside. The words felt invasive because they were precise. Your entry, he continued, his voice neither harsh nor soft, cannot be guaranteed while you believe the universe owes you an apology. The gate behind him seemed taller now. What happens if I don't get in? I asked quietly. You return. To what? To the weight of being human, he said. To time. To choice. To consequence. The white flickered faintly at the edges, as if reality itself was unstable. You are not here for sentencing, he said. You are here for clarity. I looked at the gate one more time. It did not look cruel. It looked exact. Am I dead? I asked. You were interrupted, he replied. The word lingered. Interrupted. As if death had been a comma, not a period. Why show me all this? I demanded. Because you believe your story is something that happened to you, he said. It is also something you are writing. The cold air deepened in my lungs. And you are not finished. The white around us trembled, not violently but with intention. Somewhere far away, I thought I heard a sound, distant, mechanical, rhythmic. Beep. The gate began to blur. The figure's outline softened. When we meet again, he said, let it not be as strangers arguing over a ledger. The last thing I felt before the white tore open was not fear. It was the unbearable awareness that I had been seen completely and still given time. Chapter 3. The trial beneath the skin. The whiteness did not crack. It thickened. What had once seemed like emptiness now felt dense, almost liquid, pressing against my awareness from every side. The iron barrier remained unmoved, but the air between us deepened into something judicial, solemn, inevitable. You believe the worst of you defines the whole, the presence said. It does not, but neither can it be ignored. A tremor moved through the groundless expanse. The space reshaped itself, not into visions this time, but into sensation. Weight returned, not physical weight, but moral gravity. I felt every decision I had ever made settle into me at once, like stones lowered into a basin. Not accusations, not flames, simply facts. You have argued circumstance, he continued. Now you must confront motive. Motive. The word entered me like a blade, slipped carefully between ribs. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but language faltered. Excuses rely on noise. This place did not allow noise. You did not steal because you were starving, he said. You stole because you believed you were entitled. The truth struck with surgical precision. You did not raise your hand solely from rage, he continued. You raised it because domination felt safer than vulnerability. I tried to interrupt. He did not permit it. You did not abandon responsibility only from fear. You fled because freedom, to you, meant absence of accountability. Each statement stripped away another layer of justification I had worn like armor. You tell yourself you were reacting, he said. In reality, you were choosing. The words settled heavier than any sentence before it. Choosing. The whiteness shifted again, but this time no images formed. Instead, I felt the ripple of consequence, not outward, but forward. Paths. Invisible trajectories extending from moments I had dismissed as minor. A cruel remark that hardened someone else's heart. A betrayal that altered another person's trust. A silence where courage should have been. Allowing harm to multiply unchecked. You measure wrongdoing by spectacle, the present said. Heaven measures it by impact. My chest tightened. Then measure the good too, I demanded. Measure the times I gave. The times I showed up. It is already accounted for. A pause. And yet, he added, your generosity often required audience. The words landed without hostility, which made them impossible to reject. He was right. Even kindness had sometimes been currency, an investment in admiration, leverage, image. You feared being insignificant, he said. Yes, I admitted, the confession barely audible. So you constructed importance from control. The statement did not accuse. It clarified. The air thickened further, pressing inward. Not crushing, containing. You ask why suffering exists, he continued. You interpret it as negligence. But adversity exposes interior architecture. Interior architecture? I repeated bitterly. Pressure reveals structure. When weight increased, your foundation fractured. My jaw tightened. You built the foundation. I built capacity, he corrected. You determined alignment. Silence fell again, but this silence was analytical, almost anatomical. You resent restraint, he said. You interpret limits as hostility. Limits kept me small. I countered. No, pride did. The word pride did not arrive as insult. It arrived as diagnosis. You equated humility with weakness, he said. So you rejected correction. The whiteness seemed to recede slightly, not outward, but inward, as if the confrontation was moving deeper into me rather than surrounding me. You crave fairness, he continued, yet you rarely extended it. I tried, I insisted. You compared constantly, he said. Comparison breeds resentment. That stung because it was invisible in everyday life. Envy had not always felt malicious. Sometimes it felt justified. They had advantages, I muttered. And you had others, he replied. The groundless expanse vibrated faintly, like a low-frequency tone humming beneath reality. You believed adversity excused retaliation, he said. But pain does not authorize harm. I felt something inside me resist, then falter. What would you have had me do? I asked quietly. Endure everything without reaction. Respond, he said. Do not retaliate. The distinction hung between us like a line drawn in light. Respond. Retaliate. I understood the difference instantly and hated that I did. You imagined strength as force, he continued. True strength absorbed shock without transmitting it forward. The words rearranged something in me. I had thought endurance meant suppression or explosion. I had never considered transformation. You were not asked to be flawless, he said. You were asked to grow. The accusation I expected never came. No declaration of eternal exile. No thunderous decree. Instead, something far more unsettling. You are unfinished, he said. The whiteness thinned at the edges. Through it, faint flickers appeared. Movement, shadows, urgency beyond this place. You stand here not because you are irredeemable, he continued, but because you are accountable. Accountable. The word echoed differently than guilt. It implied possibility. You are capable of altering trajectory, he said, but only if you cease arguing with reality. A vibration intensified beneath the airless sky. Somewhere distant, a surge of energy pulsed. A voice, muffled and frantic. Hands moving quickly. You feel that? He asked. Yes. That is time insisting. The iron barrier began to blur, its edges dissolving like ink in water. Before you return, he said, understand this. Blame is easier than responsibility. Responsibility is heavier, but it liberates. The vibration surged again, stronger. You cannot undo what has been done, he continued, but you can interrupt repetition. The whiteness tore open along a seam of brightness. Sound flooded in, shouts, commands, the hiss of machinery. The presence's outline softened. One final truth, he said. I leaned forward instinctively. You were never deprived of guidance. You simply resisted it. The seam widened violently. Air rushed into me like a verdict delivered through breath. Pain ignited across nerves that had gone silent. Light stabbed my vision. My body convulsed under foreign hands, forcing rhythm back into muscle. The iron barrier vanished completely. The expanse collapsed into ceiling tiles and sterile glare. I gasped. The world had returned. Not gentler, not fairer, but tangible. And beneath the ache of reopened flesh, something else pulsed steadily. Not innocence, not condemnation, responsibility. Chapter 4. The abyss that waited. The ceiling above me was white. Not infinite this time. Not sacred. Just painted drywall lit by fluorescent bulbs that hummed with indifference. Voices moved around me. Hands pressed against my ribs. Something tight circled my arm. My body had returned, but it did not feel like ownership. It felt like confinement. Pain settled into me slowly, as though reclaiming territory. Stay with us, someone said. I wanted to laugh. They had no idea where I had just been. My eyelids fluttered, but the world refused to steady. The room blurred at the edges, and for a moment I feared the expanse would swallow me again. Instead, memory remained. Not the visions, not the images, the verdict beneath them. Unfinished, accountable, capable of altering trajectory. Those words did not comfort me. They weighed, because now I understood something I had not before. The iron barrier had not been locked. It had been waiting. Days passed in fragments. Hospital light, machines, morphine fog, visitors who looked at me like I had returned from somewhere holy instead of somewhere exact. They asked what I remembered. I lied. Nothing, I told them. It was easier that way. Because how do you explain that the most terrifying part of dying was not fire, not torment, not eternal exile, but exposure? When the room was empty and the medication thinned, I stared at the ceiling and felt something darker than fear. I felt proximity. I had been closer to something absolute than I had ever been to truth in my own life. And I had argued with it. Sleep came in violent fragments. When I closed my eyes, I did not see the gate. I saw the absence beneath it, because there had been something beyond that iron structure. I had sensed it only briefly when the expanse deepened. Not flames, not demons, not punishment in the theatrical sense. It was something worse. Separation. A hollow so complete it swallowed identity. An existence defined not by pain, but by distance from meaning. I understood then what true loss would have been. Not suffering, not agony, absence of connection. The realization chilled me more than the memory of judgment. I had stood the threshold of being cut off, not out of cruelty, but consequence, and I had almost justified it. One night, long after visiting hours ended, I woke to silence. The machines still ticked their mechanical rhythm. The hallway lights bled faintly beneath the door, but inside me, something stirred. A question. What if I returned to the same patterns? What if the interruption meant nothing? The presence had said I could alter trajectory. He had not said I would. That distinction terrified me, because freedom is not comforting when you recognize how often you have misused it. I replayed moments from my life, Not the dramatic failures, but the ordinary compromises. The small betrayals. The times I chose ego over empathy. The reflex to defend rather than understand. The habit of resentment I carried like inheritance. None of them felt catastrophic alone. Together, they formed architecture, a structure leading somewhere. If continued long enough, it would not require divine rejection. It would construct its own exile. That was the darkest truth of all. Condemnation did not begin at the gate. It began in repetition. The doctor told me I was lucky. The bullet had missed by inches. An artery spared. A lung punctured, but reparable. "You've got another chance," he said with a professional smile. Another chance. The phrase echoed differently now. Chance was not random. Chance was mercy disguised as biology. When they discharged me, the world felt sharper. The air outside the hospital carried weight. Traffic sounded louder. Faces seemed layered with invisible histories. Every person I passed carried choices I could not see. Every interaction held potential impact I would never fully trace. I realized something unsettling as I walked to the car. The confrontation had not changed the world. It had changed my awareness of it. And awareness is dangerous. Because once you see the architecture of your own damage, ignorance is no longer an option. The darkest moment came days later. Alone in my apartment. No machines. No visitors. Just quiet. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and examined the scar near my ribs. A thin line. Evidence of interruption. I stared into my own eyes and asked the question I had avoided since waking. If I had crossed fully, if the interruption had not occurred, what would have happened? The answer rose uninvited. I would not have been cast into spectacle. I would have entered distance. An existence shaped by every selfish pattern I refused to confront. A continuity of self without transformation. That was the horror. Eternity would not have changed me. It would have solidified me. The gate had not been a barrier to keep me out. It had been a boundary protecting what was inside from what I still was. That realization hollowed me, because now the responsibility was unbearable. If I returned to anger, I could no longer blame ignorance. If I harmed someone, I could no longer claim blindness. If I chose resentment again, I would be walking knowingly toward that hollow. The darkness was not around me anymore. It was possibility. I could waste this extension. I could slip back in a habit. I could reinterpret the experience as trauma, hallucination, near-death confusion. Or I could change. But change would not be dramatic. It would be microscopic, moment by moment, reaction by reaction, ego restrained, impulse redirected, pride dismantled. No audience, no spectacle, just reconstruction. The abyss had not frightened me because it threatened pain. It frightened me because it revealed trajectory. And for the first time in my life, I understood. Damnation is not imposed. It is accumulated. I lay down that night without praying. Not because I rejected the presence, but because I understood something new. Prayer without transformation is negotiation. And I was done negotiating. I closed my eyes and whispered only one sentence into the dark. Do not let me become what I was. There was no voice in response. No vision. No sign. Only silence. But this silence did not feel empty. It felt expectant. Chapter 5/5. When we meet again. Recovery did not arrive as revelation. It arrived as irritation. Physical therapy appointments. Insurance calls. Bills I did not want to open. Muscles relearning obedience. Nerves firing in places they had forgotten. Transformation did not glow. It limped. The scar tightened whenever I moved too quickly. It was an honest pain. It reminded me that interruption had been physical, not metaphorical. But the deeper reconstruction was quieter. It began in moments no one witnessed. The first time anger rose and I did not feed it. The first time I apologized without adding explanation. The first time I listened fully instead of preparing a defense. Each decision felt small, but I remember what he said. Architecture, trajectory, accumulation. So I rebuilt deliberately. I visited my mother first, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, out of clarity. We sat at her kitchen table where years ago I had slipped bills from her purse and convinced myself it was harmless. I took from you, I said plainly. She looked confused at first. Then she understood. I know, she answered. There was no thunder, no collapse, just acknowledgement. Responsibility did not erase history, but it altered the present. I reached out to people I had wronged. Some responded, some did not. Forgiveness was not owed to me. That truth did not sting the way it once would have. Because repentance is not a transaction, it is alignment. I stopped blaming circumstances and conversations. I stopped romanticizing survival tactics that had harmed others. I stopped glorifying hardness as strength. The world did not reward this shift immediately. In fact, it often seemed to ignore it. Opportunities did not fall from the sky. Wealth did not multiply. Recognition did not follow. But something inside me stabilized. Not pride, not superiority, structure. For the first time, I was not reacting to life. I was responding. There were relapses, sharp words spoken in exhaustion, old resentments flickering back to life, temptations to retreat into familiar ego. But now I recognized them for what they were. Repetitions. And repetition, I had learned, builds destiny. So I interrupted them. Not perfectly, not heroically, consistently. That was new. Months passed. The bullet wound faded into a thin, pale line. One evening, I found myself standing outside alone. The sky stretched above me, enormous and indifferent. Cars passed. Laughter drifted from somewhere, down the block. The ordinary rhythm of existence continued without awareness of my private reconstruction. I thought about the gate, about the expanse, about the presence. I no longer imagined him as a shadowed figure guarding entry. I understood something different now. He had not been interrogating to exclude. He had been revealing to invite, not into a location, into alignment. The iron structure had not represented arbitrary judgment. It had represented integrity. Nothing distorted enters what is whole. Not because it is unwelcome, but because it would fracture what it touches. That realization changed everything. Heaven was not a reward for performance. It was communion with what is uncorrupted. And corruption is not just crime. It is ego unexamined. It is pride unchallenged. It is harm unrepented. I closed my eyes and felt gratitude rise. Not as bargaining, not as demand. Just recognition, breath, time, opportunity. None of them permanent. All of them extended. For a moment, I sensed that familiar depth. Not surrounding me this time, but within. Not a void, not distance. Presence. No voice spoke. No vision appeared. But the silence did not accuse. It waited, the way it had before. The difference was this. I was no longer arguing. Years later, whether many or few, I cannot know. There will come another interruption. Not a bullet this time. Not violence. Just conclusion. When that moment arrives, I do not expect spectacle. No dramatic soundtrack. No cinematic gates. Just clarity. And when we meet again, because I believe we will, I do not want to negotiate. I do not want to justify. I do not want to accuse. I want to stand without distortion. Not flawless, but transformed. Because I finally understand what he meant. Entry is not about deserving. It is about becoming. And the becoming begins long before the gate. Until then, I live aware. Not paranoid. Not fearful. Aware. Every interaction is architecture. Every decision is trajectory. Every breath is borrowed. When the final meeting comes, I hope there will be no need for conversation. Only recognition. And perhaps, welcome. The end.